with that intro. That was Pinball Wizard, made famous by The Who, off the 1996 album, My Generation. Welcome to the first official episode 1 of the Knights of the GlassTable podcast. I am Crash the Dim-Witted, aka the Pinball Wizard. To my left and to my right, my two close friends, Lucky, and introducing the guest to my left, Ralph Partha.
Hello.
So, as I like to start, I'm going to ask my guests 3 questions. Okay? So, we'll start with Ralph Partha. Well, Partha, how did you get introduced to tabletop role-playing?
I got introduced through, I'd been a long-time fan of D&D, but never got the area to come out and do it. A friend of mine from high school kept asking me to come out because he loved it. And the funniest thing was, when I got to the table, I knew every single person there. Yeah.
Okay.
I see. Okay. You, Lucky, how did you get introduced to tabletop role-playing?
Oh, God. Okay, well, it started with someone who both of us hope to get on the show, is our good friend Gesundheit, or Sunny, or we don't know what she's going to want to call herself yet.
Yes, of course. Hopefully one day.
And it was actually started with D&D version 3. But growing up, my dad told me stories of playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which has become our mainstay game. When I was a child, I was roughly 10 or 11, I discovered my dad's box of modules, the rule books, the lead figurines, everything that he had. Some of his old characters, which I've carried on. And yeah, that was pretty much the start, and then it has become steady for going on 12 years?
It's a long time.
I think it's been 12 years.
Alright, so, question 2. We'll take it back to Ralph Partha. Question 2. What is the defining characteristic of Ralph Partha? Or, how did you come up with the name?
Well, the Ralph Partha name is actually an old maker of minis. And I would hear this name often bandied about. Lucky was a big fan of their work.
Love his models.
And I thought, you know what? This name is a great name for a character. I'm going to use this one time. On top of it, well, the defining characteristic for Ralph Partha was he's basically a homebrew that I made off a Dragon magazine design.
Oh, God.
And he's a drider. And despite any of his background, the whole fact that he's a drider means anywhere he goes, he gets noticed. For good or for bad.
Now, for some of our fans who may not be familiar with this, what is a drider?
Oh, good point. Well, you have to go in deep because you can't just say, well, I could just say he's a drow, and then there's a whole controversy that you don't even touch how you pronounce that word.
The best way to describe a drow or drow would be a dark elf. Dark-skinned elf. They've been purple, black, different colored, gray.
They've used various variations on that dark theme. Always white-haired with a few, eccentrics. Red-eyed.
Hailing from the dark city of Menzoberranzan, if anyone knows the R.A. Salvatore Dritz Duerden series, you can get all kinds of history from that. And I think all of us have read.
I actually pulled in Ched Nassad because it's actually mentioned in there instead of going straight up with Menzoberranzan. I just thought, let's throw a little variation. Now, a Drider is a drow elf that is cursed by their chaotic spider queen goddess Lulth. I know, a lot of information there. So, they're part spider. They're...
Picture a centaur, except instead of the bottom half of a horse, it's the bottom half of a spider. So you have thorax, all 8 legs, and then you have basically from the waist up a person, arms, hair, head. No fangs, no poison.
No, those were options in the Dragon magazine, but that was for a 6th level thing, and it was
really?
It was a lot of extra material, and there was a lot of stuff where you'd basically be getting thief skills for free, and I didn't want my character to be overpowered.
Yeah, I think...
So I shied away from a lot of that and cobbled together something that worked, that a first level character could actually use.
Very well, very well. Now, I pass that same question to Lucky.
Oh, God. Well,
what is Lucky's defining characteristic?
The name. The name Lucky was for 2 reasons. One, it seemed I had a silver horseshoe up my butt. But also, our original DM, our good friend Taradna or Sunny or whoever she's going to call herself, father, couldn't pronounce the name I'd chosen, which I decided to remake my version, like D&D version 3 character. I chose the Elven Ranger. I wanted to call him Luciane Goldenleaf. Well, Mr. F couldn't understand it. He couldn't pronounce it, so he just said, okay, Lucky it is. Well, then every time I'd roll a 1, which is a critical fail, I would, bang my magical sword off the ground and it would vibrate for 1 round and I could continue. Or I'd fall on top of a table surrounded by skeletons, they'd climb up on top of me, and they couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. Killing 6 giants with 3 hit points left.
It goes on and on.
I am the luckiest SOB at a game table ever.
Now, for those of you who are unaware, a critical fail is when you roll 1 on a totally sided die. That means that something bad is going to happen. So now, we don't need to go too in depth, but just a quick little couple points on Terrell Partha, a memorable moment since you started playing tabletop RPGs.
Are we gonna do the deeping wall moment? Or
No. It's definitely the stagecoach of death. Because there's really 2 ways things can go wrong in D&D. There's the critical fail, of course,
when you roll it,
where it's just bad failing, it's just bad rolling. But there's also, good and bad ideas, because D&D is such a freeform thing. Now, we were in this chase of 2 stagecoaches. Hobgoblins had captured their characters central to the plot, and basically we're trying to save them. Now, my naivete, being the character for that was Ortho the Untamed, a half-orc sorcerer. But I thought, you know what? If I take out the driver, I can stop this thing before it even gets started. And because it's D&D, you gotta go with Magic Missile. You don't miss with Magic Missile. You always have. Actually, it's Pathfinder. But Pathfinder's essentially still D&D when it all comes down to it.
Yeah.
So I took out the driver, thinking, oh, well, I've done it. I've done what I set out to do. And then
the horses just kept on going. Sadly, I missed this. I was away at college at the time.
Yeah.
I was wishing I was at the table for this session.
There was no, I thought, well, it would quietly stop. No, not quietly stop. It goes out of control, careening, both coaches careening into each other, various characters getting knocked off through the course of events. One of our alum, Smiley the Dip, or whatever he's going to call himself.
Probably Smiley.
Was playing a ninja, and he was probably the most most durable character in the party. And Crash here was DMing this. Decided, on 2 separate types of die. I think it was 8 and 6, or maybe it was 8 and 4.
8 and 12, maybe?
Something like that, but just to give an idea of the damage. So doesn't Smiley roll 2 ones? And I still kind of resent him for this, because I would have loved to have those 2 ones, but yeah, he rolls the 2 ones, he comes up smelling like a rose. Other people are getting injured, knocked into unconsciousness, which in D&D and Pathfinder, it means bleeding out until you're stabilized. I finally fall off the stagecoach, and it leaves one other person. I don't know if he's going to go with Slash or what name he's going to use either.
Oh, God.
But at the time, he was a rattling alchemist. I can't remember what name for that character was offhand. He didn't have the strength. He didn't have the strength to grab the reins. So there was no way he was getting control of the coach. He was left on all by himself. And our friend Smiley says to him, "Throw your grenades." Because he's an alchemist, they can actually brew
And create grenades.
a fantasy potion-style grenade. So what does Slash do but tosses them amongst the horses? Now, as soon as he did this, several people at the table were just horrified that he would carelessly disrespect life like this.
Exploding horses,
So,
burning
yeah.
puppies. We've got a history.
Oh, man. I wasn't there for the burning puppies, thank God. That's another story.
That's one that is not one of my
We will
favorite
cover the
DM
incident with
moments.
burning puppies on a later episode entitled "Why You Should Not Play an Evil PC Party."
What? Never, ever
Oh,
DM
man.
an evil party. Ever.
I'm not entirely in agreement with this, but people do... That's in the realm of, like...
It was dark.
With
It
the
was really dark.
With the alignment system, there's always somebody who will play any type of alignment rather stupidly, and that is probably a great example of it.
I think we have another, title for another episode here.
Yeah.
Alignments, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Well-
no, the good, the bad, and the chaotic.
Oh man,
So-
stupid chaos.
Now, we move on to Lucky. He can tell us a small story about a
Memorable
favorite
moments.
memorable moment.
Actually, you know what? I think it actually has to be my my first actual book campaign. We were doing Tower of Castanamir, Island of Castanamir.
Tower of Castanamir. That is a favorite.
That's one of our staple ones. I wish I had the book for that. Sadly,
A book module is something that was printed by whatever company of game we're currently playing. It's a written module that a writer writes out, plays out an adventure. You follow it similar to a choose your own adventure book.
Pretty
with
much.
Yeah.
Some combat encounters written in.
There's one mod that I've actually got that is quite literally, the map is always the same, but I can put whatever monsters I want in whatever room and whatever treasure I want in whatever room. It actually leaves me a spot to just pencil it in or whatever. I thought that was brilliant. But I think my favorite one is literally was a blind shot arrow. It was my 4th or 5th session with Mr. F and
To be named.
well, I figured we'd just call him
Orin
Mr.
the Horrible.
You know what? Yeah, Orin the Horrible. That's the perfect name for him.
Since he pretty much tried to get that on his that's a minor story, but on his Wi-Fi to
Oh right.
to
It'd be like the name
because
of
we at one point certain people were out of the loop and we were Skyping in people, which was a bit difficult.
It was interesting.
So
But anyway, basically it was we went into this room and all of a sudden like spells were getting cast at us from the ceiling, but they were from different spots. And this voice shouts out, you know, I'm a terrible wizard, you know, leave now and you'll survive. And I'm like, I'm an elf. I can hear things insanely well. And Oren looks at me and he goes,
Quite right.
yeah. And he's got that quizzical look of, where are you going with this? Which normally when it comes to me, there's going to be something interesting that
Just
doesn't
so you
always
know,
play out
Oren
well.
has two looks. The quizzical, where you going for this, and the look of fear, oh god, we're all gonna die.
Well, no, it's
No,
the,
he's
no,
got a
it's,
third look.
it's
well, okay, no, that technically is the look,
yeah.
but it's not. Well,
It's not his look of we're all gonna die. It's the look he gives
yeah.
you, and you feel
all the
like we're
party
all
members
gonna
go,
die.
uh-oh, we are screwed.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue.
So I say to him, you know what? I got a bow. I'm gonna shoot at wherever this voice sounds like it's coming from. Don't I roll a 20? Perfect critical hit right there. Like Mr. Free.
Good old companion of the critical fail, though, is the critical 20, the
Well,
other end of the scale.
yes,
where
the
you
complete
cannot
opposite.
lose. You
So
cannot lose.
doesn't Oren say, you know, there is no like don't roll it again to see if you instantly kill something. Arrow flies off into the rafters of this room. Doesn't fall. I think it was an imp. It was some little tiny demon or devil or something like that. And I'm like, you son of a bitch, you're gonna die. And he's like, no. If you let me live, I'll give you my treasure. And I'm going, you know what? I'm a level 1 character. Yeah, sure, give me your treasure. And that was the suit of plate mail that Lucky was running around with forever.
Wow.
I was the slowest thing on the field. I'm moving 4 on the board, but you know, it meant that I couldn't be damaged as much. It was harder to hit me. And I basically became the Aragorn style ranger. That was kind of the deciding factor, was that suit of plate mail.
All right.
Alright, so now we're gonna go right into it with my two guests and co-hosts, Raul Partha and Lucky. Remember, I am Crash. So
You sure are.
today, otherwise known as Crash the Dim-Witted,
The Pinball Wizard.
the Pinball Wizard. So today's subject matter is something a lot of games and dungeon masters and players deal with. That would be house rules, where there's the ruling in the book, and you take that ruling, you shift it. In some cases, you make complete changes.
Oh God. Yeah. House rules are they're almost like a lifeblood of every DM. Being you, Crash, and I both being avid DMs of different games.
And Raul Partha here, being a veteran player of his own right.
Yeah.
We've all seen, well, you know, Oren's house rule of having to have a defined list of spells, and it's not, you know, I devoutly pray to you every day, the way I do it, and it's, you have your entire spell list, unlike a mage who has to memorize from the spell book, which makes, in my opinion, makes a little bit more
So
sense.
there are pros, positives to house rules. Things that make games with systems that can be difficult to understand run smoother. And then there can be cons to house rules, where you innocently don't see the problem in letting a player have his way for a fun thing, and then you turn him into a hulking death machine.
Oops.
This one sounds familiar, Crash. Why are you
Would you
going
like
to
to hang a name on that one?
So, one of the cons of house rules, and this first story takes place in the tabletop game printed by Privateer Press, known as the Iron Kingdom's Full Metal Fantasy game.
Beautiful series.
So, for those of you who don't know, it's based on the
War Machine Hordes game.
War Machine Hordes miniature wargaming similar to Warhammer, most popular miniature wargaming known. So, for this purpose, the game, uses trolls, elves, goblins, races like that as player races, and then magic, swords, steampunk.
It's very steampunk.
Very steampunk.
A lot of things are run with steam.
Powered jacks, which are,
Giant mechanical things of, I'm going to destroy you.
The whole process of that is different factions fighting for war, peace, religious beliefs, making this a world in which characters can flourish, because you can have a group of characters, all 6 characters could be from the same land, and all 6 would have a different mindset, different skill set, different belief system.
Well, true of many games and what we get out of it, because it's that play off those various characters that makes the game entertaining.
It's the party dynamic that quickly forms after like the first session that really defines how the game's gonna go.
Now, that party dynamic also plays into this. So, a friend of ours here, who shall go by the name of Dexter.
Yes, Dexter the Undexterous, as I like to call him.
Yes.
He creates a character called Nikolai.
There's a story behind that one.
He is a trollkin. Now,
is he a trollkin or an ogre?
Trollkin.
Okay.
Trollkin, think of a troll, a little smaller, much more intelligent.
Yeah.
Maybe not in his case, but generally in his race.
Trollkin are much more humanoid than the trolls that we see in the bathroom of Harry Potter.
Yes.
Well, basically, their intelligence is their defining characteristic as compared to a regular troll.
He decided, in a source book known as Kings, Nations, and Gods, he had seen something known as a Doom Reaver. Now, that is a faction-based class, and what a Doom Reaver is this is a criminal chain to a sword that absorbs souls and slowly makes the character go insane. Now, the game restricts the secondary classes you can go into. As in the Iron Kingdoms role-playing game, you start off with 2 careers right away, which makes it different from other role-playing games, but that's a topic for another time. So,
but it also the book also restricted the race.
Yes, the book restricted the race to only human, and that's where this comes in.
Specifically, Tadorian human.
Yes.
Well, that's the whole faction.
He wanted an idea to be that he was a captured, troll who was just killing villagers up in the mountains. They would capture him and turn him into one of these Doom Reapers. I kind of like the idea of this backstory.
It was a decent backstory.
So I let him roll with it.
And Nikolai, thy name is Death.
You came to me to ask my opinion on that. Like you and I had a Skype conversation or something while I was away at college, and you were starting this whole campaign without me.
Mm-hmm.
And you were like, it says this, it's supposed to be this way, but this is the backstory that he's come up with, and I'm like, not knowing anything about the game at all whatsoever, but hearing the backstory, I'm going, it's plausible.
Yeah.
I think a military would be stupid not to take this giant hulking thing of death and just make it more death.
And as Raul Parsa just stated, then the Nikolai, his name is Death, was born.
Yeah.
The issue was the bonuses of the sword, in which he was strong enough to wield 2.
You shouldn't have let that happen.
Yeah,
Again, the troll, his troll resistance, just from being a troll, his high physicality and other things, kept him from being tainted by the power of these swords. And he became a walking death machine. He killed large metal bots built for nothing but killing. He killed in one turn.
Some of them named.
Some of them named.
Yeah,
named major NPCs
yeah,
within the lore that I mistakenly brought in. He had destroyed. He had killed. What was his record? 9 fully fleshed out combat NPCs in one turn.
Yeah.
I think
Due to the power of Berserk, which is when he kills something, he can kill again. He stacked it with another ability which allowed him to move an inch and then, strike an opponent. Yeah. And with Berserk, he would continue to do so.
Yeah, I think the one session I sat in on, I think he did like 7 in one turn, and I'm just looking at this battlefield going, holy.
Which, you guys are probably at home thinking, well, that sounds awesome. I want to do that.
It made the game really. Essentially, it made combat boring for the rest of us. Because it was basically send in Nikolai. Nikolai will destroy everything, and we can just sit back and sip some margaritas and get a tan.
It's one of those party dynamics. A single character is overpowered. It becomes the game's their show, and you're bit players in the adventure, which I like to see Nikolai crush through things. Just watching it was a sight, but on the other hand, my character was no slouch, so it's kind of like I didn't build him to be second fiddle to nobody.
So that's the story in itself. Now, we'll do a few stories on pros and cons, different things about house rules, but we told a con story. Now we're going to move into a positive.
I think our pro story should be about Ral Partha.
Yeah, well, that was definitely a pro story. I mean,
would you like to inform us, Ral Partha?
I'm actually rather proud of this Drider character because a lot of the material in the Dragon magazine, if I took it wholesale, it was meant for a 6th level character, not an entry level character that he was.
Right.
On top of it, there were a lot of abilities and bonuses that he would get that would overshadow a lot of other things. I was going to break it down or reshape a lot of it. Then I realized, you know what? Simple basics. He's got this spider characteristic, so that's going to up his AC. I'll keep that. Again, because he's a spider, his climbing is 100%, which is
right.
That I've had a little fun with.
That one I pretty much gave to you, and I'm actually glad you haven't abused it in that game.
Now, speaking of that game actually has 2 instances of heavily house-ruled player characters.
I keep forgetting about your guy.
Dumas D'Artagnan.
I would say 3, actually.
Well, 3 because then there's
the witch is also...
Well, the witch and then my sister's character as well. Which kind of...
What is the aspect that was the house rule that?
Her basic backstory was because she was playing a Drow character.
Yeah.
She and I, sat down one day and decided that it was... Basically, the backstory of the character was she left the Underdark, and the only thing that she had was her Cloak of Elvenkind. Basically, when she started the campaign, that's all she had. And she was slowly, piecing together her armor, her weapons, things like that. That's why, and on the pirate ship fight at the very beginning of that campaign, she immediately picked up 2 scimitars from the pirate corpses, along with a set of leather armor. Because she quite literally had nothing but the clothes on her back and possibly a sharpened stick.
Yes. Mine wasn't so much as a race, mine was a class. Now, in late 2nd edition, Dragon Magazine, You're going to hear that mentioned a lot. Dragon Magazine is, 200-something issues that were published under the banner of TSR. And TSR
by
is...
Paizo Publishing, no less, which I always find that significant because they're the ones who publish Pathfinder. That's why I know it's a name I can trust, and that's why I consider many people consider Pathfinder
superior to Dungeons
D&D 3.75.
Also superior.
Is the nickname it usually goes by.
Yep.
Fairly superior, yeah. Especially considering some of Wizards of the Coast's more current offerings, which a lot of us are not.
We will get into that.
That's going to be one that
That's going to be an extended, probably 2-part episode.
Well, we're probably going to do one for the podcast, but then when we get the YouTube channel that I'm going to run, I definitely want to do like a couch session.
It's coming soon. We have no timeline on that, but just keep your ears open. When it started, I'll definitely say it. You'll hear it here first.
I'd like to have it up and running. If I can get it up and running before 2016, that's kind of my personal goal timeline.
Now,
but with personal events in my life and work and everything else,
so
it's a little difficult.
Dumont d'Artagnan, the Dungeon Magazine, as we were saying, TSR published the Dungeon magazines, and TSR is the company responsible for publishing Dungeons and Dragons when it first started.
Yeah.
So you owe TSR Publishing pretty much everything for the existence of tabletop RPGs.
Yeah, then
I would say so.
But in their dungeon magazines, they would put out tips, NPCs, and then they started to put out different classes, which weren't complete classes in their own, but takes on current classes. One being the Swashbuckler, which kind of combines the finesse of a thief with the fighting prowess of a fighter.
more so a paladin. The Swashbuckler had to have that whole
high charisma,
suave. Paladins don't normally have to have charisma.
And Swashbucklers followed a similar code of honor, not to a deity, but to combat and honor. Like, you will never strike an unarmed opponent.
Think the Musketeers. That's essentially
the name. The name in itself should be a dead giveaway.
Yeah. They should have called it the Musketeer class, but they called it the Swashbuckler mostly because the Swashbuckler, the flip side of the good character which you played would have been the pirate.
Yes. Now, the Swashbuckler's restricted to using light weapons, different things like that, but he gains the ability of parry, which it says in the Dragon magazine is given the Cavalier's parry. Now, what you need to understand about the Cavalier is a mounted warrior with usually lances and other large-based weapons.
Well,
so
he has a very short selection of weapons that he's supposed to be proficient in.
But parries would be different with a large weapon compared to daggers and rapiers, scimitars.
Right.
So we really don't understand, how to make that work.
Yeah, that took a little while between you and I sitting down with the Dragon magazines and reading through the articles several times to figure out how we were going to convert it from the second edition, which came out around I want to say late 70s, early 80s, to the first version AD&D, which was what we played, which I think the books are dated 1971 copyright. I think. I think
that might be a little bit early, because
probably
as far as I know,
78, 79.
Well, the Ralpartha
74, right?
Yeah, the Ralpartha models we play with are often punched on the bottom 78.
Well, anyway, yes, we looked in second edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and we found in the Fighter's Handbook, the complete Fighter's Handbook, the Swashbuckler. And the Swashbuckler's parry in second edition was, as the Swashbuckler uses light weapons, he gains a third attack.
Yeah.
With his parry, he can sacrifice one of his attacks to parry his opponent's next attack. So he needs to sacrifice an action, an offensive swing of sorts, to make a defensive stance. We found that to be much more reliable system.
Yeah. Well, and I think we shifted it even further to, if you were going to parry, that was basically, your action.
Yes, we did sacrifice that until I leveled to the point where I gained the third attack.
Yeah.
Because then it was, I could...
No, where you gained the second attack.
Yes, where I gained the second attack.
Yeah.
I had a third attack due to wielding 2 weapons.
Right.
But when I gained the second attack to strike 3 times, I was able to make an attack and then sacrifice my other 2 for the parry.
Yeah.
And the thing with the parry was, I could only parry certain weapons. If somebody came down at me with
a two-hander,
you were great sword, that would be an issue.
Weight versus the light weapon.
Basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. Someone came at you with like a basic hand axe or the standard battle axe, just the 1 to 8 damage battle axe. I'd say you could probably. I said you could have parried that. Spears, you could deflect them, not necessarily parry them to the point where it would leave the opponent wide open.
And then,
but
the other thing we house ruled, because it actually didn't state it, it just suggested it, but we made it a solid rule, because it makes sense. The swashbuckler cannot wear anything medium or heavy classed as armor.
Yeah, it was basically studded was top.
Yeah, as it
basically
limits their ability to move.
Essentially,
dexterity-wise.
Yeah, studded leather, plain leather, or padded. Or just cloth, should you so wish squishy.
That's Advanced Dungeons and Dragons house rules. And the cons of the Iron Kingdom's Full Metal Fantasy. Now, on to a third game which had both pros and cons in it, is we don't like the way this game plays. However, the sessions in itself were a great hit amongst the group.
Oh, now I know which sessions you're talking about. DC Adventures.
No.
Or
DC
Heroes.
the 1988
Oh god.
DC Heroes role-playing game for tabletop.
That the first session we did of that was the definition of broken.
Now, what you need to understand now, for all of you would recognize the name DC, as in DC Comics, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, the Justice League.
Yep.
Create your own character within that universe. So, this will lead into another thing in which house rules come into a big play. Yeah. When you start to run things with superpowers.
Yeah.
Because as soon as superpowers enter the game, then you have to look into what superpowers are allowed for players to play. Because in every group, and we've got at least 2...
Probably 3.
Two? You say 2, and I'm going to say every single person at this table has a certain thing to pull some crazy stunt.
Well, I'm thinking, like, at the time we first did this, we definitely had specifically 2 people who really liked to
push the envelope of what they could get away with within the confines of the rules.
Smiley straight up breaks a game. Under the bus. And then when Noah decides to join in, it's game over. Everyone might as well go home. Under the bus. Fun is just gone.
Not for Noah, that's his chaos. The chaos meter. It's like, chaos meter to 100?
Yeah,
yay! Because Noah, just compared to Oren, Noah has this look. We call it the Gweeb look because it's another character he plays. And he just gets this smirk on his face, and you think, oh my god, what are you going to do?
Yeah, that's basically, wait a minute, pause game. You look at him. What are you doing?
That is very, very true.
And he will get this shit-eating grin on his face and look at you and go, nothing.
Nah.
No puppies or horses were actually injured in the making of this podcast. It's all just fun in our imaginations.
So, Yes, the DC Heroes game. Now, like you were saying, and it's not just a problem of playing a superhero game and superpowers. It's
How can the superpowers be used in the most douchey manner possible?
now the way most superpowered games work is they work off a point system. You build your stats, your powers, and your skills off a set group of points. You can take negatives to your characters' weaknesses to make yourself stronger. A prime example, Superman. Superman is very powerful, but Superman has weaknesses to kryptonite. If he's in an environment without a yellow sun,
Yeah, the red
magic.
sun radiation that saps or impairs his power.
he has three, as the game calls it, 3 major weaknesses, which gives him more points that he gives more powers or makes his powers
And like the kryptonite,
stronger.
kryptonite's one of those things it's the more dangerous. Where kryptonite is a fatal weakness,
Right.
that makes it more points as well.
Yes. So, before we even began, we started going through and taking out some powers, such as telepathy, because that can be a dangerous one. You're playing with someone's mind.
Yeah.
We took out things where, you were immortal.
Now, do we took out Sandman, didn't we? Like, essentially,
You
what
and
would have
you
become...
and Smiley made a list.
Yes.
Oh,
Basically, you went
They-
power by power,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you made a list of what was.
It
Appropriate.
basically became both of them sitting on a couch going, okay, let's take, this power. How can it be used to, like, the ultimate extent of,
The wording.
yeah. So, telepathy...
Never outside the wording of the book, but
Yeah.
take it to the absolute limit of what it could do. And then we compiled a list. We went with that list and began the game. Most lead into the character creation for it. Again, Royal Parse's entire character concept is a house rule in itself.
Well, to be fair, this was, in a sense, offered to me, and it was a take on what is my favorite DC hero. I'm more of a Marvel guy, but when it comes to DC, it's Green Lantern all the way.
I think you were Blue Lantern in that one.
Well, see, that was the difference. That was the spin to make it interesting.
Oh,
Especially
okay.
because GLs, like, there are tons of GLs on Earth. That's a bit extreme in itself. The last thing you need is another one.
Yeah.
As of this, recording podcast, there are at least 4. We don't talk about that one.
Yeah, I don't like that character either, and due to certain things, he's technically been written out of existence, so yeah.
But, as you know, Green Lanterns, they get their power from will.
Yeah, willpower.
With,
The
no
whole spectrum
fear and
written by
stuff.
Jeff Johns, yeah.
Hope is the power that fuels the Blue Lanterns. Now, the Blue Lanterns in themselves do not have the power to create constructs. They use their rings to instill hope into others.
Yeah, mostly they just create a little bit more elaborate of a force field than the typical GL protection.
Figures, she's going for the Jolly Ranchers.
Now, as we go into this, Blue Lanterns gain their powers from their power battery, which is a large energy form or beast. There are different iterations of it. But it's a large battery on their home planet. But it also works in with the power of the Green Lanterns from their world of Oa. So, I was running this game as well, is you're going to hear a lot of the bad situations tend to come from games I DM'd early in my start.
You were much more inexperienced, and you'd pick games that we really didn't know, and you'd get in over your head, which we've all done when we were young. Like, hell,
Yeah.
You ran this when you were what, 17, 18?
No, DC Heroes was only a couple years ago, probably 22, 23.
No, it was before I went to college.
Dude, I've only been in...
You've been in for
Couple years? 4 or 5. Maybe 4.
Because you've been...
4?
No, it hasn't been that long since... Probably 3. We'll go 3.
No, 4, because he joined right after my first year of college.
Alright, so 4.
And the first session of DC Heroes was... Oh, no, it was just after you joined.
Alright, well, getting a little off track here.
Sorry, we've been doing this for so long.
Yeah.
Timelines get...
Well,
but
it's timey-wimey.
We play so many different systems and different...
Now, we also...
There's so many different characters in a short amount of time.
I decided...
It seems like longer.
I decided what I would do is... Hey, because there are 4 or 5 Green Lanterns on Earth, the power that his character gets is so... He gets so much of a charge from all that will energy that he's able to create minor constructs.
Which is at least consistent with a lot of the Blue Lantern lore that there was at the time as well.
Yeah. We also house ruled out a lot of the stuff that the Green Lanterns get. Green Lantern isn't something you're supposed to start off with. It's something to be earned.
Yeah.
But they gain so many different things. Limited invulnerability, I believe. Life sense. And something Raul Parsa likes to refer to as the meta ring.
Yeah, if you don't understand what meta is, metagaming is when you take knowledge outside the game and use it to manipulate your character inside the game, when your character shouldn't know this.
Yeah, the simple layman's terms are, there's the player knowledge, the knowledge you have of the universe and everything else, and then there's what your character actually knows.
However, in this case, there's the great store of information that the Guardians of the Universe know.
Yeah.
There's the signature Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, is most of his ins with the Justice League, and thus information in the DC world. And basically the Blue Lanterns were started by Hal's guardian mentor Ganthet. So the whole thing is, it has a lot of the information that the Green Lanterns would have, which meant my ring basically had a database of the DC Universe at my fingertips. So I knew everything I needed to know. There was no metagaming because my character would know anything I knew out of character as well.
Right.
Now, that's characters. There were a couple other characters we worked some house rule things in. Now, the big house rule involving DC Heroes is when we got into combat and the combat system itself. Do you remember when you were a kid, probably grade 3, grade 4, you start doing multiplication. They give you that big chart, lots of numbers, and you follow the line, and then, follow the other line, you make the L, and that's the number. Well, the way the DC Heroes worked is you rolled the dice, then you took this number to this number, and you took this number to this target number, and that actually determined how many dice you rolled.
Yeah,
then you rolled the die, and then from that number, you took that number on another table, and you had to find the target number for that, which determined whether or not you would hit your target. And then another table similar, if I do believe, that went even diagonally instead of just an L.
Well, there was a hit, and then there was the resistance.
Yeah, then there was a resistance table.
The character you're hitting is
it
factors in his approach to hit back.
It was the most convoluted hit and initiative system I have ever seen. Like, we all got confused when we did Star Wars Edge of Empire.
Well, yeah.
Nothing compared
not
to...
compared,
the Star
not compared to the DC
Just
Heroes.
so you know, the Star Wars Edge of Empire game done by Fantasy Flight.
Wait, is that the one we're doing, or was that...
No,
No,
that's
Fantasy
the
Flight is the other one with the
one where I
was
own the actual
special
book.
Oh, okay.
dice, and of course I have that whole issue against
They have a special dice.
special dice compared to simple numerical dice.
Yeah,
Where
we
you
had
got a
the-
table, and you had to read the table to figure out what number consorted with the symbols on the dice, as they were trying to market their own dice for the game.
Yeah.
Which is clever, but again, it's more money to spend when you already spent on a core
Regular
rulebook.
dice.
Now, a core rulebook for a game, for a tabletop RPG nowadays goes for anywhere from $50 to $70 nowadays.
I think you can get the AD&D reprints, and they're, $40 to $50 each.
But even though we had the charts, that confusion of what does this symbol mean? It's fine to look it up on a chart, but to know when you roll your dice
Now-
and see a result, I find it's much better.
Well, I think if we had maintained that series, we all would have eventually gotten it. That okay, we rolled this.
Yeah,
is
we would have
this
figured it out.
symbol, and we're good.
Now, back to DC Heroes. It's 3 or 4 different charts,
Yeah.
which makes things confusing.
Absolutely.
It's really slowed down combat. One person's turn, they roll. They go to see how many dice they roll. They roll it. Then they go to see if they hit the target number, and then we make a resistance roll.
Yeah.
That was slowing things down.
It led to 10-minute turns.
Yeah,
If
it
not-
is.
Especially
longer,
people
where
who
we're
were
going
doing,
with it.
especially people like Raul Partha, whose characters would do more complicated actions as you're creating constructs of your imagination.
Well, yeah.
You're not
but
just shooting a gun.
that was half the stick of being a lantern. When you can do a construct, you're gonna not try to do the same twice. You're gonna do something.
Yeah.
Let's see how interesting I can make this.
Let's hit this guy with a truck. Let's hit this guy with an old steam locomotive. Let's hit this guy with something that looks like, I don't know, a kid's play toy.
I remember using ninja stars on Bane. A flurry of ninja stars.
Yeah,
It was
Now,
partially effective. Partially effective.
now, we decided to go back to what's referred to as the D20 system of rolling, or variation of the D20 system of rolling.
Yeah.
Which is you roll a 20-sided die. In this case, they weren't 20-sided, but you roll one die. That die determines if you hit.
Mm-hmm.
You roll another die of a different kind, determining your damage.
Yeah. It sped up combat. It's a far superior system.
Yeah.
Not to say that other games don't branch out.
No, it's nice to branch out, but
You need something that works, that you know works, you know how it works.
yeah, and the dice already exist in the world. There's no point in making different
don't
ones.
reinvent the wheel, essentially.
Well, yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Now, there was that into DC Heroes. We've had a lot of things with AD&D where we've done minor the house rules. So I'm just gonna go around the table here and so Raul Partha, your final thoughts on house rules in a tabletop role playing game. Yes
Well,
or no?
I think house rules are essential when it all comes down to it. You have to make it work for your group. I mean, granted, some of that because most of our DMs in our group were mentored through Oren because he was the first
Yeah.
DM of our group, and certain things happen there. I mean, granted, Nikolai came out of something like that from first edition D&D. There were certain level caps to certain races that everybody thought, this is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it worked there. And you gotta find out what works for you when it all comes down to it.
Lucky?
Yeah. House rules are the necessary evil of being a DM. Hal, all three of us have seen Spoonie talk about different house rules and so on. It's there's roll. Is it Spoonie that does if you roll a 2 on a to hit roll? It's I slap you and tell you to leave.
No,
that's a web
different
series. I can't remember the name of it right now.
Oh my god.
But
Dash Noah, he'll know.
Yeah.
But-
Noah will know.
yes,
But
I
Yeah, it's one of those, every DM's going to have different set of rules, and as a player, you just, there are going to be house rules you may not like. You just have to suck it up and play on. Like, if you truly enjoy the game that you're playing with, who I would think are your friends, then who cares if there's a stupid rule?
Yeah.
I agree with that. And again, that's the thing. When you gotta think about house rules, you gotta think about what is your player base. How much are you gonna let these players get away with? And always house rules that break games. Don't get me wrong. Some systems in themselves, within the confines of the rules, with no house rules, can create a character that is overpowered. Such as you will hear referred to on here as the Kung Fu Wookiee.
Yep, he's one of them. Or things like potion miscability, which is just, it's dangerous and makes the whole environment nervous just for using certain items.
Now, as we move into our, closing statement, I'm going to ask a couple closing questions to my two co-hosts and guests today. So, again, we'll start with Raul Partha. New players looking to get into tabletop RPGs. What would you recommend? Such a system or, ideas. What would you recommend to our viewers? Our listeners, sorry. We're new to this.
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. Well, Ironically, I like Pathfinder, and I had read a lot of 3rd edition things beforehand, so I was partial to that coming in, without actually having played it, but having played a lot of 1st edition AD&D, I'd say, get on the ground floor, get in an original, but, to some degree, there's a whole chart. You could all chart the history of AD&D, but
Yeah.
I would say 1st edition AD&D, even with all its its archaics or E. Gary Gygax's zany logic. I wasn't gonna be that nasty. Just say zany logic. It's like I have no idea what he's thinking.
Elves aren't allowed to be a ranger? We live in the woods. What are you thinking?
Yeah, that's a completely ridiculous one.
Lucky?
Good example.
What do you recommend for new players?
New players, if you've got a group of people and you're all learning at the same time, I would find someone. Like, look online for gaming groups and find someone you can play with who's done tabletop gaming before, because if you don't have someone who has experience in like previous experience in tabletop gaming, games can go off the rails in a fiery mess. We've done trial games where none of us know what to expect. And they were okay.
Yeah.
Mostly because we have that friendship of, no matter what the hell happens, we're all going to be
Well,
together.
that's one of the benefits of our group, where some people don't have that emotional connection to each other.
Yeah.
That we've really benefited from. Also, the thing is, play what you like. I mean, different things have different settings and different genres, and it might not be your cup of tea.
Do your research. There are tabletop games for everything. If I think just a quick list of what we've done Star Wars, Game of Thrones, Song of Fire and Ice.
Yeah.
At that point, we did the Pokemon MMO. We've done All Flesh Must Be Eaten, which is a zombie apocalypse. We've done.
Good old World of Darkness.
Oh, good. Don't even start with me on that one. You know, we've done World of Darkness, we've done Rifts, we've done Pathfinder, we've done
Shadowrun?
That's it. What was the one that Palladium? Was it Palladium?
We had Palladium Fantasy with Tannis, I guess we'll call him.
Yeah, I don't know what what to call him.
Do I know any other characters that he's played? No,
Yeah.
I really only played with him as Tannis, so
Yeah,
we'll do that.
I never I only ever sat at the table with him running the game. I never got to sit at the table with him playing. There's been a bunch of others, and then of course we do all kinds of. You know, we've done Talisman, Munchkin Cthulhu. The zombies.
The board game.
Yeah, we still need to get our hands on Cards Against Humanity because I think if we do a podcast of Cards Against Humanity, that'll just be hilarious.
or you know, they'll vilify us.
Comment below on our Twitter page, on our SoundCloud page.
Yeah,
if you want to see us, do Cards Against Humanity or a live stream of a certain game, let us know.
Yeah. Topics you want us to cover.
Absolutely.
One of the ones that I've got planned for the YouTube channel is kind of go in chronological order of all the D&D series, pros and cons of each one. I'll probably do like an episode for each one, so there will be
additions and whatnot.
Yeah. So of course we get into 3.5 and forward. I might have to do a two-parter for 3.5 because all of us have some experience with 3.5, and we've had the good, the bad.
3.5 has been a starting point for a lot of people before Pathfinder really got off the ground.
Yeah.
All right. So, final question I'm going to ask is, since we've been talking about a lot of different systems today, we're just going to keep in line with that. What parts out of all the systems we've played, which one has been your favorite, just as a system of rules, and which is a game that we have not yet played that you would be interested in?
Well, that's a hard thing to separate because you get lost in all the good times and everything else.
Yeah.
To what is actually a system. I really like the Iron Kingdom system. Once we got worked the bugs out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that's a great system. It's very, very simple, so it's easy to pick up. Maybe I should change my answer to say that's a system you should start with, especially if you like steampunk and little magic.
Guns, magically powered robots, swords, sorcery, gods, dragons. Yeah. It's all in there. And what's the game you've heard? You've had interest to play, but we haven't quite gotten around to it yet.
Here's the thing:
is there anything we haven't done?
There are things I know that are tent poles, so they're mostly the more famous ones that people know about. So those were the games I wanted to play: D&D, World of Darkness. I've had a chance to play both of those. Shadowrun, though some of the people here have played it, I haven't had a chance to vet a character into that and would still like to try it.
Yeah, I made a character for Shadowrun. We attempted to start it, and I had to go off to college, so I never got to play Shadowrun.
Well, see, that's the thing, though. Dexter made a character.
And then, who was running that one?
Cotter, if I'm not mistaken.
No, was that Cotter?
It was Cotter originally, and then Noah went to pick it up.
But that one never got off the ground.
Yeah.
And that was the one which I had actually started making a character for.
Now, I ask the same questions to Lucky. Your favorite game on the system base? And a game or system we haven't, been down that road yet.
Purely system-based? I like... See, it's almost a tie between the first two systems I learned. It would either be the original AD&D or
You mean first edition?
well, yeah.
Because there's original D&D with the whole chain. Like I said, we can go into that history of it some other time.
Okay, yeah. Or Dungeons and Dragons version 3 by the first version done by Wizards of the Coast, because at that point, and also in AD&D version 1, you don't have the skill tree.
The skill tree can be
The
quite a
skill
pain.
tree was originally released in 3.5, and it started to cause problems as soon as it was invented.
It can be daunting, and I know from what you've told me about a lot of it, it's DM error and DM abusing it where you need skill, the skill checks are unreasonable.
Yeah, because it's oh, you're in a sinking ship, you need a DC 20 swimming check. I don't have points in swimming because, I'm a fighter. I wear chainmail. I'm not gonna be swimming anytime soon.
Yeah.
It's...
So what about something we haven't quite gotten down, or in the case of Raw Parts, of something you may have missed out on in your time away?
I would love... I got two. There was one we started, and I was in the first thing of it, and again, I had to go back to college. The Lord of the Rings one.
The Middle-earth Adventures game.
Yeah, because it was the second time that we played through it. Because the first time we played through it, I wasn't even around. The second time, I made the character. I was actually given the ring, mostly because I was the elf and I had clerical abilities.
Actually, mostly because...
You knew I wouldn't abuse the ring.
No, mostly because Raul Partha and Noah didn't want it to go to Smiley the Dead.
Yeah.
That was a no-go.
But the other one was, and I made a character for it, but I never had the time to join in any of the sessions from it, is Riffs. I'd made a scout character, I had everything all laid out, and then I got busy with stuff, and I just wasn't able to sit in on the games.
I don't know if I'm talking out of turn, but you might want to talk to Cotter about that, because had been, at least for a while, batting the idea of running that again.
Well, he's been running, he's been talking about running a bunch of stuff.
See,
that's
I
don't know if he's getting tired with running the.
No, it doesn't seem to be that at all. It's more
game
like
that's going on right now, or
he had a lot of those ideas at the beginning, and it's like,
so
you got to slow it down. Sometimes you just got to slow it down.
Yeah. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed our first episode. I know it's convoluted and
probably a little confusing.
Confusing. We kind of go on topic, then off topic. We get back on it and we get off it again. But this is just us sitting around talking about stories, trying to be informative about tabletop role playing, and this is Crash, Raul Partha, and Lucky. Logging off. Wishing you guys, that live in Canada, a happy civic holiday weekend.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Monday's
a holiday. And
I'm probably scheduled to work. Holiday pay.
And on that note, if you're not working, maybe a little holiday gaming session. And if you are, leave you with this note. Happy gaming.